Hello, and welcome to the second online public open house for the KYOVA 2050 Multimodal Metropolitan Transportation Plan, or MTP. Thank you for your interest in this planning process. This presentation will start with introducing the Kentucky, Ohio, West Virginia Interstate Planning Commission, also known as KYOVA, and explaining the agency's role in transportation planning. We will then provide information about long-range transportation planning, including a description of what types of information and analysis will be included in the updated MTP, and the anticipated timeline to complete the update. Finally, we will provide more information about how you can provide input and stay informed and engaged throughout the planning process. Formally organized in 1968, KYOVA serves as the Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO, and Transportation Management Agency, or TMA, for the tri-state area of West Virginia, Kentucky, and Ohio. Federal law requires the formation of MPOs for urbanized areas with populations over 50,000 and TMAs for urbanized areas with populations over 200,000. The role of the MPO and the TMA is to ensure regional coordination in the transportation planning process and the allocation of federal transportation funding. The MTP is a comprehensive plan that considers all users of the transportation system, including evaluating mobility needs for individuals as well as freight across all transportation modes. This is a long-range plan, but it will also include projects scheduled for implementation in the short term, as well as longer-term projects. KYOVA is required to update the MTP every 5 years, and projects that will require federal funding need to be in the MTP. This slide shows where we currently are in the overall MTP update process. We began working on updating the MTP last summer and are working toward having an initial draft plan out for public review by the end of February. So far, we have reviewed regional trends and existing conditions and gathered information about transportation system needs. The transportation needs were identified based on input provided by the public, the advisory group, and focus groups, as well as technical analysis and a review of previous needs and studies. We presented summaries of the transportation system needs at the second advisory group meeting and the online public meetings that were held back in November. Now, through ongoing coordination with the advisory group, we will work to define, evaluate, and prioritize candidate projects and strategies that are identified to address those needs. Following the January 2022 advisory group meeting and online public open house, we will make any necessary adjustments before circulating the draft MTP in February. The next several slides will provide more detailed information about the elements that will be included in the MTP. The draft MTP will include a summary of public and stakeholder engagement activities, including what we heard and how that was considered in the planning process. Opportunities for public and stakeholder engagement have occurred throughout the planning process. To ensure an inclusive planning process, KYOVA also conducted targeted outreach to groups and populations that have been traditionally underrepresented in planning processes. Stakeholders have been engaged in the planning process through advisory group meetings, focus group discussions, and interviews. The advisory group includes members of KYOVA's Technical Advisory Committee and Policy Board, as well as other transportation stakeholders in the region. The advisory group has met 3 times during the planning process to help provide guidance to the project team. The project team also conducted one-on-one or small group interviews with several stakeholders to verify existing conditions and get information on transportation needs in the region. 3 focus group meetings have been facilitated to gain targeted input from key transportation interest groups. The focus group topics included economic development, active transportation, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. These meetings provided opportunities to engage key transportation stakeholders, experts, and advocates, and to explore critical transportation topics in the region. The MTP will also include a performance report. Federal transportation legislation requires MPOs to include a description of the performance measures and targets that will be used to assess future performance of the transportation system. In the legislation, Congress defined national goals and required the U.S. Department of Transportation to establish performance measures related to those goals and purposes. The federal performance measure rules cover highway safety, highway asset management, highway system performance, transit asset management, and public transportation safety. The performance measures have been addressed within the MTP goals and objectives so that the MPO planning process aligns with national goals. The KYOVA 2050 MTP will also include a vision, goals, and objectives that are identified to help guide the development of the planning process. Early in that process, KYOVA worked with the advisory group to develop a vision for the 2050 MTP. The advisory group felt that the 2040 MTP had a strong vision statement and agreed to carry this forward for the 2050 MTP. The vision established for the KYOVA 2050 MTP states, "We envision a growing region serviced by a safe, equitable, and sustainable transportation system that provides real choice among modes of travel. Our transportation system will contribute to an enhanced quality of life by providing attractive connections between destinations for motorists, bicyclists, pedestrians, and transit users, without compromising air quality or cultural and environmental resources. And it will support the efficient movement of people and goods at both the local and regional scale." KYOVA also worked with the advisory group to develop goals to support progress toward realizing the MPO's vision. The 8 goals for this plan include: 1. Preserve, maintain, and enhance the existing transportation system. 2. Support the economic vitality of the region, especially by enabling competitiveness, productivity, and efficiency. 3. Improve the operational efficiency of the transportation network. 4. Enhance the safety of the transportation system for all users. 5. Enhance the security of the transportation system for all users. 6. Protect and enhance the environment and promote energy conservation. 7. Enhance the integration and connectivity of the transportation system across and between modes for people and freight. And 8. Maintain financial responsibility in the development and preservation of the transportation system. Understanding the population and economic characteristics of the region will help inform the transportation investment decisions in the KYOVA 2050 MTP. So the MTP will include a regional profile with information about the region's population, including data about household income, age, race and ethnicity, commuting characteristics, and access to vehicles. The regional profile will also include a review of the plans and studies that KYOVA has prepared since the MTP was last updated in 2017. The project team reviewed these studies to capture the priorities and recommendations identified in previous planning efforts and included and incorporated this information in the MTP update process. The draft MTP will also include a list of recommended multimodal projects to help prioritize transportation investments in the region over the next 25+ years. This list is being developed using a multi-step process. The first step of the process was to explore as many ideas as possible for improvements and strategies, using feedback gathered from the advisory group meetings, focus groups, public surveys, and comments and interviews. The initial ideas were reviewed and prioritized based on input from the advisory group and the public and a consideration of the technical analysis that was conducted by the project team, including outputs from the region's travel demand model and crash analysis. Following this initial screening, the concepts that appeared to have both merit and feasibility were advanced for further evaluation and refinement. The project team is now evaluating the preliminary projects. This evaluation will consider public input provided through this online open house, advisory group input, and how the preliminary projects address the goals and objectives that were established for the MTP. This step of the process will result in the development of a prioritized list of candidate projects for inclusion in the MTP. The FAST Act requires MPOs to develop fiscally constrained long-range transportation plans. This means that the funding forecasted to be available to the MPO over the life of the plan will be sufficient to implement the plan's recommendations. KYOVA has worked with the West Virginia Department of Highways, the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, and the Ohio Department of Transportation to estimate revenues through 2050 based on historic revenues and projected trends. The projected revenues are being compared with the costs of recommended improvements to ensure that the final MTP is fiscally constrained. This slide shows the projected funding that is anticipated to be available for transportation improvements in each of the 3 states within the MPO. Recommended projects will be sorted into 3 phases based on the anticipated time period of implementation. The short-term or Phase 1 projects will be expected to start construction before 2028. The midterm or Phase 2 projects are anticipated to be constructed between 2029 and 2040. And the long-term or Phase 3 projects are expected to be implemented between 2041 and 2050. Based on the current funding forecast, there will not be enough money to address all of the identified needs. So in addition to identifying project recommendations for the 3 phases of the fiscally constrained MTP, KYOVA is also identifying projects for what is called the Vision Plan. The Vision Plan includes projects that have been identified as needs, but that exceed the anticipated funding available. After the recommended projects and strategies are defined, an air quality conformity analysis will be conducted. In order to receive funding from the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration, KYOVA must demonstrate that the MTP meets the transportation conformity requirements of the Federal Clean Air Act. The purpose of the air quality conformity analysis is to ensure that federal funding and approval are awarded to transportation activities that are consistent with air quality goals. The KYOVA 2050 MTP process is expected to be completed by April 2022. The draft multimodal project recommendations are currently available on the KYOVA2050.com hub site. We invite you to review and comment on the recommendations by February 2nd, 2022, so that those comments can be taken into consideration while preparing the draft MTP document. The public will have another opportunity to review and comment on the draft MTP in February and March before it is finalized. After the draft MTP has been reviewed by the public and the advisory group, we will prepare a final draft MTP that will go before the KYOVA Policy Board for approval in April. There are several ways to provide input about the region's transportation needs. We invite you to fill out the public survey anytime between now and February 1st, 2022. A link to the survey is provided on the KYOVA MTP website. The URL for the website is shown on the screen here, and it is www.KYOVA2050.com. If you prefer commenting by phone or email or would like to request additional information, please reach out to Salim Salameh, the Deputy Director for KYOVA and the Project Manager for the MTP update. Salim can be reached by phone at area code 304-523-7434 or by email at ssalameh@kyovaipc.org. There will be another opportunity to provide comments when the full draft MTP document is released for public review in late February 2022. Thank you for your interest in this planning process.